Tell me what you think of this, what I always call protocol. If I want to learn something from a manuscript I read or a book chapter, I used to highlight things. And I had a very elaborate, extracted from my university days, system of stars and exclamation marks and underline that mean a lot to me that can, bring me back to a given segment within the chapter. But a few years ago, I was teaching a course in the biology department at Stanford. And for some reason, we had them read a study about information retention. And I learned from that study, one of the best things we can do is read information in whatever form, a magazine, research article, et cetera, a book, and then to take some time away from that material, maybe walk, maybe close one's eyes, maybe leave them open, doesn't matter, and just try and remember specific elements. How much does one remember? Then go back to the material and look at it. And I've just been positively astonished at how much more information I can learn when I'm not simply going through motor commands of just underlining things and highlighting them, but stepping away and thinking, okay, I don't remember how many subjects there were. I'll go back and check that, maybe make a note, and okay, they did this, then they did that, and then it's crystallized. And when, as I say this, I realize, of course, this should work. Like, this is the way that the brain learns, but somehow that's not the way we are taught to learn.
Yeah, well, I'm smiling because when I was 22, I wrote this book called How to Become a Straight A Student, right? And the whole premise of the book was, I'm going to talk to actual college students who have straight A's and who don't seem completely ground out, right? Like not burnt out. And I'm just going to interview them, right? And the protocol was, how did you study for the last test did you study for? How did you take notes for the last? So I was just asking them to walk through their methodology. The core idea of that book was active recall. That was the core idea, that replicating ideas, what I used to say is replicating the information from scratch as if teaching a class without looking at your notes. That is the only way to learn. And the thing about it was, it's a trade-off. It's efficient, doesn't take much time, but it's incredibly mentally taxing, right? This is why students often avoid it. It is difficult to sit there and try to replicate and pull forth, okay, what did I read here? How did that work? It's mentally very taxing, but it's very time efficient, right? If you're willing to essentially put up with that pain, you learn very quickly. And not only do you learn very quickly, you don't forget. It's almost like you have a pseudo-photographic memory when you study this way. You sit down to do a test, and you're replicating like whole lines from like what you studied. The ideas sort of come out fully formed because it's such a fantastic way to actually learn. It was my key. Like the whole premise that got me writing that book is I went through this period as a college student where I came in freshman year, was like a fine student. Not a great student, but a fine student. And I was rowing crew, and I was sort of like excited to do that. And then I developed a heart condition and had to stop. Congenital wiring in the heart, atrial flutter thing. I mean, I couldn't row crew anymore.
Is that a prolapse of some sort?
It was a circuitry issue that would lead to an extremely rapid heartbeat. It's like really rapid, like tachycardia, right? You get 250 beats a minute, and it could be exercise induced, right? Which is not optimal. You could take beta blockers, which would moderate the electrical timing, but beta blockers reduce your max heart rate. And if you're a athlete where the entire thing that matters is your max heart rate, so you're doing something like 2,000 meter rows, your performance on beta blockers just goes down. It makes no sense. It's like being a basketball player that wears weighted shoes. It's too frustrating.
Right. It also makes you super mellow.
I was pretty mellow guy, but I was a worse rower. So I stopped that. I was like, okay, I want to get serious about my studies. I can get serious about my studies and writing, right? That's when I actually made the decisions that I've been stuck with for the next 25 years after that. But one of the things I did to get serious about my studies is I said, I'm going to systematically experiment with how to study for tests and how to write papers. And I would try this, how did it go? Deconstruct, experiment. Try this, how to go? Deconstruct, experiment. And active recall was the thing that turned me all around. And so I went from a pretty good student to 4.0 every single quarter. Sophomore year, junior year, senior year. I got 1 A- between my sophomore year through my senior year. It was like this miraculous transformation. It was active recall. I rebuilt all of my studies. So if it was for a humanities class, I had a whole way of taking notes that was all built around doing active recall. For math classes, my main study tool was a stack of white paper. All right, do this proof, white piece of paper, and just, can I do it from scratch? If I could, I know that technique. If I don't, all right, I'm going to come back and try it again later. Completely transformed. I did so well academically. That's why I ended up writing that book. to basically spread that message to other people. So I'm a huge advocate for active recall. It's really hard, but it is the way to learn.